Vampire, the Dark Ages. Oh, hey, hi. Welcome to RPG with DBJ. I am your host, DBJ, and of course, all of you are the co-hosts on this channel as we continue through February here in the States, the Black History Month, and I am taking a look at a number of role-playing games of which I own, many of them physical, some of them including their PDFs. This time we just have the physical versions, but today we are going to go through Vampire the Dark Ages. So all of you, of course, are creatives, community, and the kind folks that join me here as we take a little bit of a page through a deep dive in some role playing games that I think are have the space. Hey there, hello there, Druden. Have the space to include various world cultures and cultures of black and brown people around the world in role playing games. Now, of course, these many of these games may not have been designed with that intent, but in my um, play experience and opinion, I feel like many of these games have space for that, and you don't have to erase something to include something else, and so I love it. No. John Wright says, "News alert: Wasi just laid off their entire Latin American team in Brazil. So much for promoting diversity. Ugh, ugh. One of the literally one of the best ways to promote your product is to have it in various countries and languages and yeah, that's yeah, it all goes back to money. Oh, Night of Your Life. Hi, Night of Your Life. Night of Your Life says that I have the 20th anniversary edition of Vampire: The Dark Ages. Storytelling is amazing. Yes. So wow, I can't believe the watch. Sorry, they just I was hoping not to have to discuss them any longer, or at least for a long time. But yeah, they foot in mouth syndrome, right? Jeez. And sorry for all those people in Brazil. Hey, here I tend to go positive, so here would be an amazing thing. The staff in Brazil make their own system or go away and come out with something amazing that truly encompasses their culture and they I would love that. Mike says I have the V5 system, version 5 system, but no one to run it with locally. Yeah, yeah. Vampire kind of it has a cult following through the entire line has a cult following through all the White Wolf systems and such, but we're going to get into that as well. So, a generality. Now, mind you, I do have a number of books here that are tangentially related to Vampire: The Dark Ages. Like I have Veil of Night, which describes Damascus and Constantinople, and a little further into the Middle East. Of course, we do have here Dark Ages Fae, as well as Dark Ages Mage. Mm-mm. And we do have this isn't specifically Dark Ages, but Mummy the Resurrection and um, Mummy the Player's Guide is getting closer and closer to the camera. Mummy the Player's Guide, which details mummies from other cultures rather than Egypt. Uh, Mike says, "I'm sure Paizo would love a team that speaks Portuguese." Yeah, yeah. Juden says, "I moved away from the world of darkness a long time ago. Sadly, the Chronicles of Darkness never really took off." No, it didn't. But okay, so here, okay, elephant in the room. For people who neither hate the vampire White Wolf line nor are um, uh, sociopathic in their devotion to it. There's a lot of us, most of us are somewhere in the middle. Hey, we would like to try it out, or we've played it a few times and wish we had a group, or something of that matter. And one of the things that there's a number of things, but one of the things that have held people back is that there is a meta storyline and there are individuals, much like there are individuals who are know every nook and cranny of the vampire modern day vampire world in terms of the NPCs and the the rising of the Methuselahs and all that kind of business. But if you play Vampire the Dark Ages, those events have not only haven't happened, but you're speaking about history. And as we all know, in many ways, we never really know what history is about. We know the results of history, and we may be able to try uh, attach threads from one event to another, but we really don't know. And so, Vampire the Dark Ages gives you a space to write and rewrite the history of what modern day vampire would be. So you don't need to be beholden to a real world history or b vampire history to play this game. Um, let's open up the book, shall we? As we page through here. Now, I will say that um, the system is pretty classic. This is the first edition of the rules, in which you do have a two you have a an engine that runs in a two line mechanic. So it's a D10 dice pool system, and let's see if we can pull. I got a photocopy of the character sheet. So it's a D10 dice pool system. You have your statistics up here. You have sets of abilities. You have attributes, your abilities, and then some other things. But essentially, how the game runs is you have dots, and you fill up these dots for your attributes. The more dots you have, the better you are at it. I mean, the higher your attributes are. And then down here under abilities, you have talent, skills, and knowledges. You fill in dots, and how do you make a roll? Count how many dots you have up here, plus the dots down here. You make a roll, and then there's an assigned number, a difficulty number that you have to meet or exceed. And it's pretty simple. The only issue is that from the first edition, you have the number of successes you may need to achieve something, and then the variable difficulty number. And combining when those two start to go out of line, there can be slight problems. So for the most part, a lot of people used to just default to using just a simple number like a 6, 7, or 8 to to gain your successes and just leave it there. Like, since vampires have a way of telling history from a certain point of view, and much of the game is written in a certain point of view. Now, the other thing that's really cool about Vampire: The Dark Ages is that again, you are playing in the Dark Ages. So, unlike a modern day setting where we've seen movies about vampires and things like that, this is the Dark Ages where, strangely enough, people believe in vampires and ghosts and beasts and things that bump in the night, even if those things, even if they believe their neighbors are something that they really aren't. This was a time of paranoia and religion and faith and politics and magic and all those things combined. So playing, if you want to play in a bit of a dark, grim setting and you want to play the things that bump in the night, playing in Vampire: The Dark Ages, I would absolutely suggest. We played the heck out of this when this came about, and it just gave us the rules that we wanted to use in the first place. Um, Now, it does take place generally around uh, 12th century in our own world and in our real world settings, but there's always nooks and crannies you can add to the world and allow the player characters to adventure in those little nooks and crannies by making it a little bit more fantastical. So you're not resigned to just using only other vampires as enemies. You can use any of the other, nearly any of the other vampire books, and come up with your own adversaries and challenges and problems. And of course, we can't forget that here it goes into law and order, superstitions in the medieval world, hunters and the hunted. So you can play any of those. The people I played with, they loved they really weren't power gamers, so they loved playing characters of different types combined together, like a vampire and a werewolf and a hunter, which were human beings that are given gifted with special abilities because of their devotion to hunt down the things in the night and such. The Countess John Rice is the Countess Bathory. I would count as uh, real life vampiric. Is that the Countess that used to bathe in the blood of her underlings and people? Is that the one? Also, something that has been included from the beginning of the the Vampire the Masquerade and other systems, is that they have vampire bloodlines and clans from around the world. The Assamites, absolutely, very much Middle Eastern and uh, Persian, and of course we have all the classic vampire bloodlines: Cappadocians, the Bruja, followers of Set, of course, very, very Egyptian and such. Now, this main book deals, for the most part, with Northern and Eastern Europe. And when you add to that the Veil of Night, which I will bring out momentarily, it deals with North Africa, the Middle East, and further out uh, the eastern portions of the Middle East, over heading towards uh, Asia and such. Ravnos, they've had a problem because of being, well, I'm not going to say the word. They recontextualized as the Romani. Yeah, Michael says Assamites are now the Banu Hakim. Yep, Toreador and such. So, um, the I pronounce this. Look, don't get on me about the pronunciations. Okay, I will place the improper syllable in the and give it its improper emphasis when I feel like it. I always pronounce this the Zemise, or some people say the Zemise, the Zemise. I say the Zemise only because it sounds cool. I I like pronunciations where they sound cool. Juden says, I always thought the Assamites are a little too much cliche. I'm kind of with you a little bit, part of that. Yeah. Nevertheless, I have found fond memories of playing one in a Dark Ages game. Yeah, they did begin a little bit like cliche tacked on, like, oh, we have to round out the other vampires. um for those who don't know about uh the clans and various elements of the bloodlines in vampire, the Assamites were always the ones who, they're like assassins, and unlike the other vampires that got more pale as they were older, the Assamites turned darker until they turned midnight, uh, as they aged throughout the centuries and such. And they did become a little bit like one note, like, oh, we're just assassins. But I over time, and I'm sure just general knowledge and such, they've gotten a better hold on what they're supposed to do. Now, something that's always been included, game design. I love this page because it gives you everything you need for character creation. I appreciate the fact that they summarized it, placed it here. You can photocopy it, hand it out to your players physically and such. But um, one of the things I love about the White Wolf system, I'm going to pull the character sheet back out again. One of the things I love about the White Wolf system is that they have, I don't know how to describe this as game mechanics, but I'm going to call it competing statistics. So uh, whether you're playing vampire or werewolf or mage or the Fae and all the other ones, they do have something in here where you have competing mechanics on your own character sheet. And uh, besides your attributes and your abilities, you do have some advantages and other details for your character. The bottom half of your character sheet has these competing statistics. And so, for example, you'll have something like here for vampire, you have virtues, and for virtues, they have um, conscious and conviction, self-control, instinct, and courage. And those will be in opposition to your road, which is like the your principles, the path you have chosen to allow you to continue on in your unlife, and your willpower and your blood pool. And sometimes all of these will come in conflict with each other. And I really like that because it means that as a player, you have to try to maintain a balance. For example, if your blood pool is high and full, you fed on mortals and such, your virtues are are going to be pretty high. Your willpower, you can use all those. But as your blood pool reduces, you you can't use any of your virtues higher than your blood pool. Essentially, you're turning more bestial and you're falling into your bloodlust and things of that nature. And then willpower, you gain willpower by doing things that accompany your road and also appear for your nature and demeanor. But as your willpower lowers, it's more difficult for you to fight off the beast that's inside of you. And as your blood pool reduces, that and so it becomes this circular thing like, oh well, I need to feed to do this thing, but a feeding might reduce my uh, prevent me from using my consciousness or my conviction or my self-control or instincts. And so I'm being very generalized with that, but I do like that part of it, especially if you are someone who wants to be a little bit emo and deal with the harshness of being undead. But let's be honest. Most people want to be the thing that bumps in the night. Here's an example character sheet, and most people want to be the thing that bumps in the night. And this is one of the first games that I played where a beginning character is immediately superior to most mortals around them. Um, you almost want to say that you are vampiric superheroes just from the beginning, and then there's other things out there that are more powerful than yourself. And so, yeah, I like it. And then it uses this dot system, so your disciplines as a vampire. At one dot, it's very simple. When you start getting into two, three, and four dots in your powers, they just become even greater capabilities. Let's find one that's pretty simple to describe. Um, no, obfuscate. Okay, so obfuscate is the ability to essentially turn invisible, to disappear, to become unseen. And so, let's say you have the first dot in obfuscate. You have cloak of shadows, and a Cainite who has not yet mastered the art of deception may warp nearby shadows to cover his presence. In well lit rooms, the vampire can hide behind more solid obstacles like tapestries, furniture, and shrubbery. Since shadows are exceedingly common in this candlelit world, finding suitable cover is rarely a problem. And then it goes on from there. Unseen presence, mask of a thousand faces, vanish from the mind's eye, cloak of the gathering, and eventually soul mask. And each one of these disciplines moves up. And if you prefer in your game, maybe the vampiric characters need to find other vampires to teach them these disciplines, or you could just do it naturally and just say through character advancement they're able to get more powerful or learn certain things. um, but I like the learning and teaching part, or at least being exposed to the vampiric disciplines. We'll get into the other books in just a moment. um, this game, battle wise, not only do you roll dice to to hit someone and you roll dice for damage, there is something called soak. And so there are disciplines that actually modify your ability to soak damage. So unlike Dungeons and Dragons with armor class, this has a soak system. So once you are struck, you can then roll dice to mitigate what has happened to you. And of course, as a vampire, you can use your blood pool that fuels your special disciplines and such that allow you to, turn into mist or shape change or heal or increase your strength and such. And you could burn your blood pool to gain these vampiric speed and endurance and things like that. And with in my old gaming group, we used to describe so many things like, hey, if you soaked a spear or an arrow, it was just impaled inside of your body and such. And we would have fun like, hey, can I just push the spear through my body or walk instead of being impaled against the wall, just walk past the spear out of my body and not have it hurt me or something. And we were just like, yeah, rule of cool, definitely rule of cool for that part. Um, just going through this very quickly, I the beginnings of White Wolf, they had some great artwork in here, and it really pulled you in. I really loved it. Also, if you're someone who is a armchair historian, this is a great setting as well to then kind of like play play out the characters and the histories that they're involved in, and then kind of twist them a little bit because of the player character's actions. And White Wolf has always said that it is a dark, twisted version of our real world. Now, this is Veil of Night. The Vampire of the Dark Ages again deals with like northern and eastern Europe, and Veil of Night, as it says on the back here, is Veil of Night includes a new look at all the clans and roads active in the Muslim world, a detailed history of the vampires of the Middle East, and a complete look at the dark city of Damascus. Something I'm a bit surprised, I guess, for role playing games that this didn't the White Wolf game line from its inception didn't reignite the satanic panic, but uh, the vampire line really dealt very openly with religion and that kind of thing, and I'm a bit surprised it didn't. I mean, I like the game, so I'm glad it didn't happen that way, but yeah, I'm a bit surprised about those things. Anyway, the topic says, "There is no God but God. Like our Christian cousins, we are the progeny of Cain, but we know what they do not. Muhammad came from our lands, and the words revealed to him hide the secrets of our own salvation. The children of Hakim have their ways, but Islam is large and its monsters are many. And Cain is his curse. Veil of Night is a complete guide to the medieval Islamic world of the Canaanites who rule its nights from Moorish Spain and gilded Egypt to far-flung Persia and sand-swept Arabia. Vampires lurk." And cool. And here in Veil of Night, again, we get to walk some of the desert lands. Mike says this was a '90s dark and gritty. Yeah, this was the '90s. Dark and gritty, and eyeliner was the norm. Oh, for a short time, I had one of those ankle length coats. It wasn't black leather, but it was like oiled oilcloth coat or whatever. Anyway, that was the thing. I played around a little bit in the emo world. I am slightly ashamed to say. Yeah, yeah. Um, I know Vampire kind of gets a bad name because of its relationship to like emo gaming, everyone getting around. But I gotta admit, like this game line single handedly did like I dare say double. Yeah, it was completely goth during its time, and I almost want to say it doubled the number of people playing in role playing games because it brought in all of those, and dare I say it brought in a lot of the ladies into the game world and things like yeah, I yeah. Night of Life Flames. Oh God, I still trust like that. Oh, don't worry about it. There's still plenty of black fingernail polish to go around. You're fine. Yeah. Anyway, uh, this book, Veil of Night, is very wordy. Not in a bad way, but it goes into lots of details on like, well, here's kind of how the real world is, and here's how we deal with those things. One of the the other aspects of playing in Vampire: The Dark Ages and expanding it out is the idea of throwing vampirism and its curse into real world cultures and religion and things like that. We had one player who wanted to play a vampire character who wanted to regain his faith, and we were all like, "Well, you do realize you're probably going to die?" And he was like, "Yeah." And so we like over time, it's very difficult to play a vampiric character who actually has a mechanical feature called faith, but he played it up, man. It was just like talking about his chest burning, and he had like religious symbols wrapped around his neck and stuff, and it was really cool. He was really delved into the pain of being this immortal and such. And here talk about I did find it. Wow. Here we talk about the five pillars of the Islamic world and how vampires have to deal with that. Like, for example, we have profession of faith, the five daily prayers, the almsgiving, fasting, and the pilgrimage. And it's like, yeah, but you're a vampire. Like, I don't know if professions of faith is a good thing, but in Vampire the Dark Ages, that's the whole point. There's the every good story has conflict, and trying to be someone who's trying to gain um, penance for what they've done, um, knowing that their immortality is based upon basically taking and stealing from others is pretty cool. Um, they're uh, not often used in not often used in other uh, media and role playing games, but the idea of vampires needing to be invited in has a big part of this, especially with nomadic tribes that invite you. You have to be invited in under the roof of someone to be given food and shelter, and there's a non-violence pact that's involved in it. That's which is another thing that's pretty interesting as well. Juden says, I've I always have seen me more as a punk, but yes, I was certainly not the only girl in vampire games. Well, that was often the case in other TTRPGs, and I don't mean that in a negative way at all. I'm glad like the for some reason the game system really embraced basically um, people who were considered to be outside the norm. Let's put it that way. Today, I could care less, but there are people who are very hardline. They love themselves to have a white cis sausage party, and everybody else is like, "Yeah, I want to come to the party too," and they're like, no, you can't. And then, but these games, this game line is very much that way. Oh, I wanted to keep this map here. This map is kind of the Islamic world as seen through Vampire the Dark Ages. So it does go to the very left over here. There's Sevilla and is that Granada and Cordoba, as well as Tunis, Tunisia, and this is kind of the border of the Islamic political control with this dotted line. There's Fez over here, and then Libya and such, and then we start coming down here. If you notice on this map, it's slightly designed a little bit wrong, and that's because human beings that design maps, they can't see this from the world, so they designed it in their own, not own image, but their own point of view, and I really like that. And of course, we have Medina over here, and Baghdad, Jerusalem, Damascus, and such, Caspian Sea. Surprised they didn't. Well, I guess at the time they didn't, but Turkey's over around here somewhere and such. Yeah, yeah. Mike says vampire, even as a tabletop, and especially as a LARP. Oh yeah. Saw more diversity in his player base. Yeah, one of my best friends used to. He was devoted to the LARPing, going to the nightclubs that opened up a bit early while the LARPers went inside and such. Yeah, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, it was huge, huge. Mm, 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 Nile River and Cairo, and also again using the Dark Ages, it did open up a lot. Like for example, in the werewolf version of the White Wolf games, they had other shape changers, other lycanthropes, and so we used to put a lot of them in there. The alligator and dinosaur style lycanthropes, werewolves that were basically like jackals and such, and anyway, we had a lot of fun. Uh, so yeah, Native Life says everyone has prejudices, and RPGs help break them all. I believe in that wholeheartedly. It actually bothers me when people want to imagine a world where other people don't exist in it, like policing other people's imaginations. I find that very strange. I mean, I've seen posts and things where it's just like, black people need to have their own game if you want to have these blah. And I'm going like, are you seriously policing other people's imaginations? That's you. How do you gatekeep that? It's completely ridiculous. Um Deadman says, check out the webcomic Were Geek. Alina Pete is a Native American who plays RPGs, including Werewolf, Vampire, D&D, Shadowrun. I did not know that. Thank you for that. I did not know that. Yeah, this is cool. Also, let's be honest. Like in a medieval world where you're a vampire, you might not want to run around a desert. No cloud cover. I guess you have to pack yourself down in the sand at night or something. It would be pretty difficult to travel far distances and remain in and remain out of the sunlight when you have like nearly no place to hide. But to each their own, right? Mike says I played 2 tabletop and 3 LARP campaigns. I did not know that of World of Darkness. If it weren't through the LARP, if it weren't for the LARP, I would never have the confidence to propose to my wife. Wow. You know what? I straight up admit that role playing games pretty much saved my life, and I don't mean that in like I held up a book and dodged a bullet or something like that, but it just opened up a world. It just allowed me to look past the major city that I grew up in because a lot of people don't do that. Juden's like Gangrel for the win. Hells yes, yeah. Um, for those who are in the know of vampire but don't know about dark ages, we do have the other we do have the bloodlines. I'm calling them bloodlines, but really they're clans. And you have the there we go. So you have their traditional name, meaning like their ancient name, and then we have our modern version of it, Malkavian, right down in there. So yeah, we're Ravnos. Let's go back a little bit. Let's go back to the. Did I miss it? Did I miss it? Salubri. They were eliminated. Anyway. La Sombra. Yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, you gotta go. What I find really cool is that they divided up the clans kind of into classic vampire um powers and limitations. So it's really cool. John says your base is a desert campaign, could be in pyramids, ziggurats. Yeah, Mustafa's. Yep, absolutely, absolutely. And heck, you could even start a game where the players are like, okay, we're going to go into I don't know, uh, structures, coffin-like structures or something, and then the next game you're like, okay, well you wake up and you're nowhere near where you used to be, and everyone's like, don't. Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's Knight of Life says, but you are stuck with your bloodline. You can get thrown out of a clan. Exactly. Exactly. And that's kind of there is I often described vampire as high school and all the worst parts of it, right? Like you got the jocks on one side and you've got the geeks on the other thing, and then you've got the glee club, like all the stereotypes, and you come into it as a player character and you're just like, here's a gangrel. And you're just like, why is everybody, come on, everybody, wake up. Do we have to be like separated in these little groups? And then they look at you like, oh, so what are you trying to say? That you're better than us? And it, it's high school in all the worst ways, unfortunately. Walid sets followers of Set. And then here they talk about the relationship of the different clans slash bloodlines in terms of the the Frani, the European clans, and their relationship to the Middle Eastern world, because they could still be of the same blood, but just think of things differently. Something else that I didn't go into is one's called Tariq, One Step Ahead of the Beast, and essentially these are the roads, these are the principles that a vampire chooses so that they can remain not human, but maintain their identity before they turn bestial. And there's a number of them: Road of War, Road of Humanity, Road of Heaven. So many of them. Road of the Devil, Road of Community, and there have always been it's there's just a weird there's a weird cultural thing we have in our tabletop RPGs where the most evil niche trouble for the storyteller choice that anybody can make, someone always wants to go down that path. It's like for example, even in the world of vampires, there are vampire clans and powers and NPCs that are like, it's like, yeah, sure, I drink blood, but these people are really evil. And they're called the Bali, Baali, and they're kind of basically vampiric demon worshippers, devil worshippers. And there's always people like, well, I want to be some of them. They even came out with the the Book of the Sabbat, which is I call them the Sabbat, but they're basically like the not clanless but lawless vampires versus the in the modern day the Camarilla. I like I like you could pronounce it the Camarilla, but I like the Camarilla, little Italian pronunciation. So Mike says, so this is before the Anarch Revolution, the split between the Camarilla and the Sabbath. Yes, this absolutely is, and even the rules of the vampiric world haven't really been set yet. So you can have vampire lords openly ruling over people in a district. You can have um, uh, lawless bands of vampires just randomly running in over the walls of a city state and causing trouble and things of that nature. Yeah, this again, like some of the other role playing games that I've chosen, uh, picked where you have like your prehistory. This this and vampire. I like putting these two together because this is like Europe. This is the upper Mediterranean, lower Mediterranean, both together, kind of Persia, Middle East. I love that. So yeah, it is before all that. Mike says the Sabbath embrace the beast. We are monsters. Social structure is based on the Catholic Church. Yep, it sure is. Kind of uh, a little a little irony in there, a little bit, just a little bit. All right, so I'm going to move this over here, and here are my choices. Like, if you think just playing vampires is just, it's like, I don't know if I just want my players to play vampires. Uh, these are the three that I would include, or a version of these. I don't have Dark Ages Mummy, if there is one, and Mummy is kind of it's a little bit of a dark horse in this run because the the Mummy line is it's off on its own. It's kind of weird. Mike says, led by the La Sombra, followed closely by the Zemis, the Zemisei. Yeah, they were the La Sombra, the Zemisei, the and what's the other one? Followers of Set kind of weren't really part of the Camarilla, but yeah, there's all kinds of history. And because it is a because in Vampire: The Dark Ages it is a prehistory, those differentiations haven't happened yet. They're forming. So the events that happened that caused the split, that caused the formation of the rules of um, creating the masquerade itself, the rules of masquerade, having a single prince, doesn't matter what gender is, but the prince of a city where you have a master vampire and their political structure where you have members of the other clans kind of as a council and stuff. That doesn't it hasn't happened yet. I mean, well, let's just say that it hasn't spread worldwide yet in Vampire the Dark Ages. So you could have, say, a council of three that runs a city state. You could have uh, pro proto Sabbath like characters running around Rome or something of that nature. Um, Vampires living out in the open in many ways, and some of these creating their own cults and such. So yeah, you could play, and of course, this is history, right? You're playing in the world of the history in the modern age. Who's to remember? This is especially with when it comes to vampires. A lot of them are old enough where they not only have they experienced it, but they can rewrite their own history so the same thing doesn't happen again and again. So yeah, Drudenfuss's mages always felt off to me in There we go. Oh, I think all of you are mentioning the whole point. Okay, so Druden says mages always felt off to me in the old world of darkness. It was more like playing philosophers and not really like playing as a magic user. That is something the Chronicles of Darkness got right. Ooh, sounds like a burn right there. We'll we'll pull out the mage book while we have this discussion. Um, Night of Your Life says before the metahumans pseudo mage before the metahuman pseudo mage they worked for the vamps really at this time. Yeah, yes. Like for example in Dark Ages mage, again, the they haven't quite split off into what we know in the modern era as Mage the Ascension and Mage the Awakening. um And then Mike says the problem with Mummy is power scale. A single mummy can outpower most vampires. They sure can, and even many werewolves. Power creep exists in the world of darkness too. Yeah, yeah, it did. Yeah, you had mummy characters going like, "I'm just going to use my 7 leagues power and like literally ride on a cloud and travel like hundreds of miles and stuff and control the weather." And yeah, Mummy is I when we played Mummy, we played it far closer to the television show Highlander, where we would because in Mummy you're just basically playing an immortal, and I love it. These are I'm flipping through the Dark Ages Mage book, and in it again they are recontextualized back then to from the modern day. So for example, the messianic voices is the proto mages that became oh song singers, the religious song singers. Ooh, my brain just broke. Here's the old faith, basically like hermetic magi, pagans and such. Here's the Order of Hermes, what we would consider a modern day wizard. The old ways are more druidic. The Verbena, the spirit talkers, pagan, and then we have oh, there we go, the Valadermen, Odin, shape changers. Mhm. And in this mage, there isn't traditional paradox. Instead, there's like backlash from reshaping the world and such. And in the modern day, for those who aren't familiar with mage, people don't believe in magic, and so what ends up happening is these mages uh, run around the world casting spells. And because people don't believe in magic and they are casting magic, something has to give. So do the people believe there's magic? For the most part, no. Instead, they acquire something called paradox, and that paradox starts to shut them down, and eventually they might even be attacked um, or destroyed by their own magic because, well, most of humanity doesn't believe in magic. Again, this book is it's quite a bit wordy because it talks about where mages stand, like, and it talks about where they live, like island of the Amazons and Greece, and how do magi fit into that. It talks about various places around the world, like the sunken city of Atlantis, um, the the bull maze of Crete, kind of cool, the dark Umbra, and so on and so forth. But you can pick up these books. I put a link to the Wikipedia page because from there you can really navigate if you want to pick up the books physically or PDFs. Of course, there's some on drive through. There's different iterations of these various books. There's the even you can get them on eBay if you want the physical copies, relatively cheap, $8 to $10 for a lot of these books, maybe even less for the first editions and such. So um, there's even more. Like I even have the Mummy the Resurrection, and then I've got the first printing of it, which I think was in the 90s. I really like this artwork. I've got three versions of Mummy, and I can't find all of them. No, in Mummy, you do not have to play as someone constantly wrapped in bandages. Actually, what happens is you play as an immortal, and your character went through a ritualistic transformation, and your spirit, through Egyptology, you have different portions of your spirit: your Ba, your Ka, your Haku, and they're split into different spirits, and then those portions then come together to re-instance you to come into the real world to again fight against evil and uh, continue on with your goals and such. You could tell this is a much older book, with a older layout pattern, fonts and things like that till we come into a modern day. This all of this in the first part is ooh, why am I not catching up with oh, it stopped. I see. There we go. Let's get back into the chat. Celestial Chorus. Thank you there, Druden. Thank you. Yeah, Night of Your Life says mummies are so uncommon. Yeah, they're kind of like they're the uh they're like the last resort. They're like Silver Surfer showing up when the Fantastic Four are fighting Galactus, right? Um, Night of Your Life says they are sorcerer in the modern game. They are hedge wizards. Ooh, paradox. Mike says a mage's spell has to be plausible to work. In modern times, things like traffic lights changing at odd times, elevators getting stuck, a car hits a puddle of oil that wasn't there, etc. Yeah, in modern times anyway. In this one, it doesn't work the same. Instead, what you have are competing philosophies, and so that's where you get backlash, where you're drawing upon powers that don't really like you drawing upon them. And then there's a little bit of a chicken and the egg thing going on. Like if your power is drawn from, say, an otherworldly divine source, did you create that divine source for you to draw from it, or what? Right? Like did it exist before you came about, or did yeah? It's there's a little chicken and egg thing going on. Of course, here we have back here in the character sheet, we have our competing virtues: conscious, self control, courage, honor, love, and truth. The fact that even love is in there is very different from the rest of the world of darkness when you're pretty much fighting it. You are a being of darkness and dwelling within the shadows, and Mummy adds a little bit more light to it. And then, of course, you have your magical skills like alchemy or amulets, figurines, haku, your ka and ba, which are like your portions of your spirit. You have sekem, which are like points that you spend on your magical powers. Such, of course, there's just still willpower, still your health bar down here, and same attributes and skills and such. So pretty cool. Jude says, I have only the first two Mummy versions. The third came out when I was on the way out of World of Darkness. Yeah. Yeah. I don't have any of those like second edition books after the Gehenna, after the Time of Darkness or something it's called. I don't have any of those. Knight of Your Life says, but mage don't have that much power in the Dark Age. So as soon as they become metahumans, reality says no. Yeah, you're saying, oh, your version is like by the time they come into modern age, they're pretty much like metahumans. Okay, okay, all right. I hadn't really thought about it like that, but I'll give that to you. Yeah, back in the Dark Ages, so many. Maybe this is part of the meta of the world, but because so many people believed in magic, if you were to manipulate the magic, A, it's easier, but B, it's harder to make more powerful effects because there's so many other things around that are going like, no, I'm a spirit of the woods and I don't really want you, I don't know, lighting me on fire or something like that. Mike says, what I liked about Vampire were the historical Easter eggs, like seeing Robin Hood in the Bruja book or Rasputin in the Malkavian book. They play with that quite a bit. That's a little bit of a I like those little nods because some people were just like Aleister Crowley, I believe, was a mage. If I'm not mistaken, I think they even hint. There's, I think they even hint that there are some religious figures that might have come back from supposed death and whatnot. They kind of hint little bit in there, and of course, again, they do have a trait called faith. So, and they don't shy away from Christianity and, like I was mentioning in this other book, Veil of Night, Islam and such, Judaism and such. So yeah, yeah. Again, I'm very surprised, but if you're someone who's mature and you don't mind dealing with some of those mixing those dark aspects of vampire into a religious context, I think you have a lot of fun. Mike says, "All my World of Darkness splat books fell apart. They were well loved, though." I Yeah, my original Vampire the Masquerade book, my real original one, this they weren't hardback. They were like thick softback books, and the spine is split. The inside glue is gone. Yeah, yeah. This was long before the age of these books were created before there was the age of like collectors books, hardback collector books. So yeah. Mike says, to this day, my wife will ask me what clan a certain character in the show might be. It always sparks a discussion. Now, there was a short lived television show called Kindred the Embraced. Unfortunately, the main character on that show actually passed away and the viewership was low, so it never came back. But if you want to see a television show about modern day vampires that used this game, look up Kindred the Embraced. I think it was 7 episodes, 7 or 8. So anyway, for this review, I really suggest using Vampire the Dark Ages again as a summary. If you want to play something other than Dungeons and Dragons and you like a little bit of a dark bent to it, adding a little bit of dark reality, 12th century ish historical, Europe, Mediterranean. Persian, Middle Eastern region, I definitely suggest Vampire: The Dark Ages. Also, it uses a D10 dice pool. Always cool to roll a bucket of dice, as well as the fact that with Vampire: The Dark Ages, if you are someone who's been turned off quite a bit from the world of darkness because of some cultish behavior by fans who know every little bit, and if you're playing in prehistory, those things haven't happened yet and no one really knows what happened. All you really get is the results of those things happening. So important characters, um powerful npcs and all that kind of nature, they don't actually need to be around at all. A lot of those vampires were in torpor. They were hidden away in a suspended animation somewhere, and so you can have plenty. And lastly, if you don't want to constantly keep hiding as a vampire in your modern day games and you want it to be a little bit out in the open, playing the evil things that go bump in the night against other evil things, I definitely suggest this. And because this is February and it's Black History Month, I really think this really opens up space for various other types of cultures, whether you want to describe your character physically being different, socially, um, sexually, and more. This is an era where those definitions, locally, those definitions may be concrete, but worldwide, they haven't quite set themselves in. And I really appreciate that. Mike says, okay, that show was awful. Yes, it was. The Bruja were basically Giovanni. The Ventru was more Bruja. Do you think so? And the Nosferatu were basically shaved and bald Tremere. That, yeah, they sure were. That was the closest thing to this game that they had, and then it had a love story in it. I was like, really? Because you always have to have a vampire fall in love with a mortal. But yeah, it's the closest thing. Oh man, Night of Your Life says, started laughing. Says you all started looking at other games because Watsi wanted to be greedy, and you are now still looking at other games. Watsi is living regret now. Yeah, yeah, yeah. They actually basically we did. What's the song? We didn't start the fire, but the world is burning. It's always turning. Like Watsi basically took the greatest content creators out there and told them, stop promoting our product. Please find other game systems and promote those games. That's basically what they told everybody. Oh man. Yeah, Mike says the Gentleman Gamer has, I think, an 8-episode YouTube series on the World of Darkness channel talking about vampiric history and traditions. They're all done in one take. Brilliant. Yes, that person, and there's someone else called Burger Craig that did something like that. John Rice says it couldn't be worse than Twilight. Maybe this was who was the person that did all the really bad soap opera shows back then during prime time. Wow, who was that? The guy that I mean, Melrose Place and I can't remember. He just did a ton of them, and this was a vampire show done by that guy, and they had all like the Gangrel and the Ventru and such in it. It was for its time. It was bad, but it was fun. Not like Twilight. Twilight was a little cringy to me. Mike says, if you want proper vampire, the first interview with the vampire movie is great, and the Underworld series is a lot of fun too. I agree with that. I definitely agree with the Underworld series. I give it. I think it deserves more credit story wise than it portrayed. But I like it, especially the conflict with the Lycans and the vampires, and the fact that they set up this war and such. Not even for your life says I don't want to attack Twilight because you gotta have something for 14-year-old girls. Yeah, and if you're 100+ year old vampire, oops, I took the book. I'm trying to get another book to slip in here. If you're a 100-year-old vampire, isn't that called? Aren't you a pedophile? If you're going out in high school, I don't know. Anyway, this is the last one, but just before I get out of here, this is World of Darkness, Dark Ages Fae, and in the modern one is called uh, Changeling, and the Fae book. Again, a lot of these reprinted books are pretty wordy because they need to go into a lot more detail in a much more confined space. So it does look wordy, but I think it's just because they shrunk the font down to reduce the page count. But yeah, if you want to play uh, different types of face spirits, this is what is it? Changeling the Dreaming. Thank you, Knight of Your Life. Yeah, Changeling the Dreaming, and so here we have these are more of the proto changelings again in anime where you can play elemental creatures. You have the firstborn. They're far more like elves and such. Thank you very much. There, now your life is like, yep. Changelings, and is that it? Yeah, that's it. And then you have your shattered society with the different seasons: spring, summer, autumn, winter, and the solstice, and different various courts and such. What it means to be part of these courts and your capabilities, your mechanical features when you're related to the courts, and the politics of being a Fey person. This one deals far less with choosing between what we would call reality and the dream world. This is far more related to making promises and promises, curses, hexes, um, appeasing the humans that are being manipulated by more of the dark fae and things like that. Living with the repercussions of ancient fae that made these promises to the world, or humans that made promises to the fae, and getting back those promises. They're kind of called wood, stone, and iron promises, and bonds and such. So very much word is bond in this series. Yeah, Mike says near dark went into hunting styles, a big factor in V5, Vampire Fifth Edition, and of course there's 20. So, guys, thank you very much for letting me uh, throw these out there into the world. Vampire of the Dark Ages, real fun. Any of the Hunter books works really well. I believe in terms of playing a mortal in these worlds. Yes, no, in Dark Ages there aren't elves and dwarves and things of that nature, but they would be easy to insert as like NPC type and such, and you could describe physically your character any way you want to. So this kind of my thing that up here. And again, Night of Your Life even mentions again that I was told the Chronicles Changeling is better. I have not played or seen any of the Chronicles portions of the uh, Vampire. So apparently, there's a fan of it and saying it's much better. So check out the Chronicles, Chronicles of Darkness, change from the World of Darkness, and how that works for you. I'm not sure what changes they made. Like, is it a setting change or dice mechanic change? I know in the one of the dice mechanic changes, you would change one of the you start changing the D10 in your dice pool. So you still continue to roll the same amount of dice, but you're also rolling dice that have a detrimental effect on you as you start succumbing to the negative portions on your character sheet. That's the best way I could generalize it for people who don't even know what I'm talking about. But yeah, that's it. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for being part of the show. I really appreciate it. Thank you for a little bit of page through and for me to show off this work here. It's extremely expansive, which is I have maybe 0.5% of the books that have everything to do with this. Uh, but yeah, it's very expansive. But I like playing in. If you're someone who is a little bit annoyed with people who like to smack you over the head with all their knowledge, playing in the Dark Ages version of this game is a pretty good place to start, and as a replacement for for Dungeons and Dragons. Yeah, WotC really put their foot in it. I'm going to have to learn more about this firing of the people in Brazil and all the kind. It's so stupid. But anyway, you know, hey, Night of Your Life, have a good day, and everybody else have a good day. Great thing to take us out on. So, guys, thank you so much for being part of the show. Thank you for entertaining me. We will go back to me being a talking head at some point, probably by the maybe sooner than the very end of the month. I think I'm running out of games to show off. Um, I decided to combine this with the Mummy version because I was like, let's just put them all together because I don't think anybody wants to be bothered with that. But that being said, everyone, thank you so much for being part of the show. We go live 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on YouTube and Twitch. I have upgraded to high speed internet, so I might be able to even get the Discord in here, which was holding me back because I was having uh, internet issues. So hopefully we solve that. So guys, have a great one. I have to head off to work. You guys have a great day or evening or whatever. And thank you so much for being part of the show. Please leave a comment, like, share, subscribe. I don't even do any calls of action anymore. Like, share, subscribe. Let people know. Heck, if you hate the channel, let me know why. Don't just give a thumbs down. Like, explain yourself. I like to talk to people, especially people that disagree with me. So thank you so much. I will see thee tomorrow. Peace.